And we are live, another broadcast in the Roofing on the Rise studios, where we are sponsored by Roofing Supply Incorporated here in the Houston marketplace, where you can get your shingles from me, Marquise Mitchell, the Roof Don. Telephone number is 210-919-8987. Again, 210-919-8987. We are also sponsored by West Group Public Adjusters, where you can get an amazing hand-tailored experience for your clients. Again, West Group Public Adjusters, it's the PA for you. You need to get in contact with West Group. Telephone number is 210-919-8987. You can call me, and I'll put you in the right spot. We are also sponsored by RepCard. RepCard's an amazing digital business card. If you've been looking for a digital business card that showcases just about everything, RepCard is the one for you. We have an amazing guest today, Scott Self. Is that correct? All right, correct. Scott. This episode's been kind of a long time coming. I've been trying to get this thing rolling for, I'd say, about 4 weeks now, maybe a little bit longer than that. Actually, I think we've been talking about it for about 2 to 3 months.
2 months.
About 2 months. Yeah. So I'm really excited to jump in and discuss, what's on our hearts, what's on our minds, right? But before we jump into that, tell us exactly what you do and how you do it.
Well, the short and sweet answer is I am a business coach. I work predominantly with restoration and trade contractors. I've got 35 plus years experience in the construction world. The only thing I haven't done with my own 2 hands is frame a house and pour a foundation. And basically the last, in 2008, when the market went wonky, I had been working with a low voltage company. And at that point in time, I had kind of segued more into the sales and design side of, home theater, home automation, that kind of thing. And then when nobody was building multi-million-dollar houses anymore that wanted all these expensive toys, I got involved in the roofing sales. And so I did that, was fairly successful at it. And then in 2011, that was one of the Allstate years where they decided to deny everything. And I'm like, well, what do I need to do to help my customers? And I found the world of public adjusting. So I started working with some public adjusters and then started doing basically building consulting, where I did a lot of the field inspections, created estimates for them, things of that nature, done a lot of appraisals and umpire work. And then me as a small business owner at that point needed some funding and some other things to help my business grow. And I learned, it's not easy. So I learned the process, build business credit and all these other things. And as I'm on the phone with, again, mostly contractors, this is a whole, it doesn't matter what your vertical is. Very few small, medium-sized businesses understand a lot of actual business, but, specifically contractors. And I spent a lot of time on these funding assessment calls that I call, where I'm trying to help them get funding. These guys have no clue about business metrics. They don't understand a lot of the business side of their business.
Yep.
So here I am coaching them on things for free. And then I stumbled into an organization, and now I have access to millions of dollars in tools to help businesses grow. And so while I still do some building consulting work, appraisals and whatnot, I've really segued more into business coaching, helping businesses with a lot of their process stuff, understanding their business metrics, marketing, and things of that nature.
Yeah, I'd agree with you on the fact that most building contractors, roofing contractors, really don't understand the business side of things. They understand the roofing side of things, but it's
I've kind of coined the phrase that, especially in the trade world, a lot of it's monkey see, monkey do. Yeah. And I don't mean that as a slight to anyone. They get hired on with the company as a newbie. They learn whatever the technical side of the trade is. And then for whatever reason, they think they can do it better than boss man, or they get bit by the entrepreneurial bug, whatever it is, and they go start their own thing. Great for them. They took the leap to do something on their own. Kudos, congratulations. But in that, monkey see, monkey do process, they learned how to paint better, nail shingle better, cut trim better, whatever the trade technical thing that they're doing is. But no one has ever taught them the actual business side of things. And so that's why a lot of them fail, because they don't understand the business side of things. Now, if you're in the insurance world, there's a whole other set of metrics that, contribute to that business failure. But if you knew some of those business metrics, you could kind of pivot and position yourself to where the games the insurance companies play doesn't affect your business as badly if you know these things than not knowing these things. So there's a lot of different metrics at play. And if you're just a great knock a door, tell a story, get paperwork signed, and put a roof on kind of guy, that's great. But if you don't understand some of the business things going on, you're, not to be a Debbie Downer, but you're all but doomed to fail.
Yeah. So, one of the biggest things that we have been talking about together online are two things.
Mm-hmm.
One, the way in which that businesses are set up. So LLC, S Corp, on and on. Plug in your individual business type here. And then also how they hire. So 1099 or W-2.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been a big topic of discussion here in the industry. What I'd like to do is I'd like to jump in on the 1099 and W-2. I think
Okay.
that we can start on the LLC, et cetera, kind of midway in, or if we're in this 1099 and we feel that, it goes a little bit long, then we'll just do another one for
Okay.
LLC and how you set up. So today we're going to bring you a completely different view. A lot of people have been discussing this 1099 versus W-2. It's not just myself. It comes up constantly in roofing groups, and I've been tagged in a lot of these because I'm one of the ones that talk a lot about it, and I'm trying to educate the industry in a positive way about this. So first off, should a sales organization hire in at W-2 or 1099? What is your take?
Well, let me give you a standard lawyer answer. Depends.
Okay.
So, based on what I read, what I know, and some of the groups I'm in, on the coaching side, it's not even really a fine line, but you could do either. I mean, you can bring on a W-2 person and pay them 100% commission. It doesn't mean that you have to attach a salary or anything. And then you could also bring on a 1099 and pay them straight commission. That doesn't matter. I don't think, nobody's really doing anything exactly illegal per se, but I do believe that you're going to find a lot more enforcement coming, especially, with the things going on in U.S. Congress and, the way they're trying to beef up the IRS with personnel and budgetary amounts, whatever. I think things I've read, there's going to be more of an enforcement action. And for companies that are bringing folks on 1099 and then expecting them and or treating them more as a W-2, I think some of that enforcement action is going to affect them negatively in the form of fairly substantial fines.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of the dichotomy of what you do or how you do it. So I think if you're a roofing sales organization owner, you're trying to get out of the having to pay the payroll tax on it, but also still trying to dictate what that worker does. And that is where you kind of run into some of the problems based on, I think there's 20 points of
Yeah.
things that you have to do in order to discern between W-2 and 1099.
And if you're over 4, you're a W-2. So if 4 of those apply to you out of the 20, then you're
Correct.
W-2. or you should be
You
W-2.
should be. Yeah, right. The treatment would be if you're treated and four of those things are such, you really should be paying them as a W-2.
Yes.
Now, if you're, and I don't mean to slight anybody by saying this, but if you're a smart person, you'd be like, I want to be a 1099.
Yep.
Now, I told you, earlier, for the last, I don't know, 15 years or better, no one has written me a payroll check.
Right.
My payroll checks are written to my businesses depending on what role I was filling, whether it was a building consulting gig or whether it was something, business coaching related. I myself have not been written a payroll check. They all come to my corporations. So, if I was to go work for one of these roofing sales organizations, I'd want to be a 1099 and I'd want to set myself up as an independent sales organization. And we can go down why that's good versus being a W-2. Now, these guys are like, well, if you're a 1099 sales guy, I want leads, I want this, I want that. Okay, well, that doesn't mean that that the roofing sales organization, just because you're 1099, that they shouldn't give you leads or can't give you leads versus if you're a W-2.
Right.
If you're 1099, that just means you should pay the independent sales organization for that lead.
That's leads, yeah.
And obviously that's now a business write-off to the 1099 if you've set yourself up as a sales organization. So there's so many ways to kind of benefit yourself by being a 1099 versus a W-2.
Right.
But if the owners of the roofing sales organization insist on treating everybody as a W-2 and then paying them as a 1099, well, you're breaking the rules. And if you get fined, I'm not going to care one bit because you're breaking the rules. If you want a W-2 and you want to control what meetings they come to, what time they do things, blah, 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 so be it. Run it legit. But
100%.
I can show the roofing sales organization owners how they can make more money by utilizing 1099 guys.
Yeah.
But again, so much of these guys, again, going back to that business acumen, they don't have it. So they don't know how to think around that kind of thing.
Do you think the line between independent contractor and employee is often blurry? And how could a business navigate this ambiguity?
I personally don't think it's blurry. I just think they ignore it. There is a line there, but I think that it's ignored.
Okay.
And I think it's ignored because they think they're benefiting by wanting a W-2 but paying them as a 1099. Because again, that goes to, again, you got so many layers to the onion. So when you pull all those layers back, the reason that the roofing sales organization owners want to pay the guy as a 1099 is because they're getting out of paying the employment taxes. And why? And they're getting out of paying. They're not wanting to pay the employment taxes because they don't understand their margins. So if they're doing insurance work and you're lucky if you're getting a 20% gross profit margin, well, hell no, you don't have enough margin to cover taxes and make money yourself. So what does that mean? Well, I'm going to pay him as a 1099, but I'm going to treat him as a W-2. Okay.
So that kind of leads into my next is, what are the potential risks and penalties for businesses that misclassify workers as independent contractors instead of employees? Because you're kind of answering that right now. So I kind of wanted to throw that in.
It's pretty hefty. I know of one company that paid somewhere upwards of $300,000 in fines to the IRS for doing what they were doing.
Someone sent me a message yesterday, like, if you were to have to pay 6%, was that you? 6%? No. Okay, somebody else. Somebody tagged me in this again yesterday. Like, this has been kind of rampant across the past few months. But they were like, if the company were to have to pay back 6% on every commission, 6%, they would bankrupt that company.
Yep.
There's no way. Any company that would have to pay 6% would fail. So this is this is not just like a little itty minuscule issue that we're talking about, this could mean whether or not that company is in existence after this happens to them.
Correct. And again, that goes back to they don't understand their margins. If they understood how to mark up their stuff and maintain a margin, 6% probably wouldn't be that big a deal. But most of these guys think they're making money because
Right.
they have cash in hand, or they have money in the bank, they have ongoing revenue. But I tell the story that if you make $1 million a year in revenue, but it costs you $1,000,001 to make that $1 million, you might as well go file for a 501c3, because you're a not-for-profit organization at that point, because you don't know your numbers.
Yep. You're right. You're right. Let's hit it right on the head. Can you explain the concept? Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say a way to look at that is here in the Atlanta market in roofing. Most insurance companies on a 3-tab roof are paying about $320 a square. I know for a fact that at best gives the roofing contractor a 20% gross profit margin. So if that's a gross profit margin, that means you're maybe making 5 to 7% in net profit margin based on how you manage your overheads and things of that nature. So back to your point about the 6%, if your net profit margin is 5 to 7%, well, at 6%, you're either in the hole substantially, or you've got a couple pennies to rub together, and that's about it. Whereas if they were profiting, say, a 40% gross profit margin, you would need to sell your roofing at about $620 a square. And guys can't wrap their head around that. But if you actually do the math, that's where it would be.
Right. And yeah, I agree with you. Most companies don't want to see that line, because once they figure out what it takes to actually run that organization the right way, they're it's not that they don't want to. Most of them are unwilling to, because of the market. They want to stay at 350, 400 a square. Now, there are those very few select individuals that do sell at that price and at that margin, because they understand it, and they sell all the time. Why? Because they understand business in a different way. They're not just a tradesman.
Correct.
They're a businessman or a businesswoman. They're a business organization, actually profiting in the right way. Can you explain the concept of economic reality and how it factors into determining worker classification?
Well, I think that goes back to understanding your numbers, because back to the reason why a roofing sales organization owner would want to bring somebody on and pay them as a 1099 is the economic reality is they cannot afford the taxes in true reality. And they don't they know enough to know, well, if I'm paying X amount of dollars commission, whether it's a 10, 50, 50 or a percentage of the claim or of the contract or whatever the deal is, at the end of the day, unless they're charging proper margins, they realize, well, hell, I can't pay the employee side of that tax burden as well as my ownership side of that tax burden. So screw it, I'm just going to pay them 1099. So the economic reality is, if they don't understand their numbers up front, they're going to default to say, screw it, I'm going to pay you as a 1099. That way they still, at least in their mind, seem profitable, but they still want all the control of that salesperson, like if they were a W-2. So the economic reality is they don't understand their numbers enough. Therefore, they break the rules because they don't have the profit margin to actually do it the legit way.
What are some common misconceptions or myths about hiring independent contractors or employees that you frequently encounter?
I don't know if I would say any of them are exactly myths, but I would say a lot of it is, uh, it goes back to, again, control. So maybe one of the myths would be some slight control over an independent contractor. Yes, you can have some control over them, but you can't dictate their schedule per se. So it's back to that lead scenario I said earlier. So roofing sales organization, whether they're buying leads using telemarketing or whatever their process is to obtain that lead, there's obviously a cost there, right?
Yes.
So if they normally just hand that lead to that 1099 contractor and they say, well, you need to be at this appointment at 10 a.m. or whatever the scheduled time is, that's totally fine to dictate that this lead needs to be seen at 10 a.m. But in reality, to keep the rules the way they need to be, that 1099 should be paying whatever a incremental cost or fee for that lead, but they should still be there at 10 a.m.
Yes.
So there's still a little bit of, it's not so much controlling their schedule, because at that point the 1099 said, yeah, I will take this lead for 10 a.m. on Tuesday morning,
Right.
but they've then paid for that lead, so then they're now obligated to do it at 10 a.m.
Right.
Now, if the roofing company says, hey, I've got this 10 a.m. lead for Tuesday morning, if they give it to the contractor, the 1099 contractor, and then demand them to be there at 10 a.m., you're kind of breaking the rules. No, I mean, when you break down you start splitting hairs about the rules, you're breaking the rules. Now,
Yes.
that's not something anybody's really going to fuss over.
Right.
You know, the other thing is, here, let me give you shirts. Let me give you business cards. Here's the
Right.
contract packet you need. The independent sales organization, 1099 independent contractor, should be paying the W-2 or the roofing sales organization for all of that.
Yeah.
Now, that's all a tax write-off. But the
Right.
W-2 the roofing sales company wants to treat that as a W-2. Here's free shirts. Here's free business cards.
Right.
Here's the paperwork you need to do. So again,
And
a
there's a way to
lot of it's
structure
blurred
this,
line.
right? So, like,
Yeah.
for those of you that are watching now, watching in the future, watching later, um, you can break your job costs down, right? So it's not like okay. So it doesn't mean that 1099 has to pay up front for that service. In the cost breakdown, you could say $200 for lead fee, or you could just come down and say, hey, listen, it's $250 for every lead that you get, and then your paper products XYZ cost this, and it's listed in the cost breakdown, and then you pay them the difference. That's where you'll align yourself properly, opposed to thinking and it's more of a, like, really understanding how to do, like you said, business. So instead of having to feel like that rep needs to pay you up front, and then it kind of feels like you're blurring the lines, like, just take the lines away and do it the right way. And
Mhm.
this is a way in which that you can do it, not just up front. um
Well, yeah, to be more specific to that point, let's look at a particular deal. And whatever the commission is to the sales rep, the 1099 independent sales rep. So that was a company furnished lead, right?
yep.
And then they've got company paperwork packet that they're filling out to have that done.
Yep.
So kind of to your point, the 1099 independent sales rep says, okay, I'll run this 10 a.m. Tuesday morning lead. They sell it, and when their commission is finally come due, maybe 50% up front, 50% on the back end with depreciation or whatever
Right.
that deal looks like, you can certainly work the numbers how they need to be worked.
Right.
But to your point, the statement with the check back to that independent sales guy should say, okay, your commission was X number of dollars. You took one of our leads, that's whatever, $200, $250. You took our paperwork packet, that's $5. And if there's any other direct associated costs to that, now maybe, maybe when they're first starting out, you buy 2 or 3 company logoed shirts. If you even do that, I recommend you
Right.
don't. And there's reasons I would say that we can get into, but don't buy the shirts. You don't need them. If they're going to impose that on you, then that would be kind of a line between W-2 and 1099.
It's
Dude, I'm
such a
independent. I
stigma,
don't have to
Scott.
wear your
It's
shirt.
weird. The shirts, the hats, the magnets, the business cards. It's this ideology that you have to have those to do business.
Well,
It's
you don't.
you don't like.
No,
I don't. Are we both wearing a company shirt? No, but we're doing business right now,
correct.
right? And I didn't need to hand you a business card for you to understand that we needed to speak together,
Correct.
right? I didn't like none of these things had any bearing on how we interact with each other. And in most cases, it doesn't for a sales rep. Like just because you have a card, like you're going to have like 1 in 500, maybe 1 in 1,000 people that will say, "You don't have a business card? I'm not doing business with you." Like, on to the next one.
Well, and you can take it even a step further. A lot of people want websites. Well, guess what? A website's nothing but an online business card.
Right.
If you want to do marketing or something, that's where you need your landing or squeeze pages. But that's a whole other topic of conversation.
Correct.
But but to the point is, if going back to if the 1099 guy was smart, he doesn't want any of that hat, t-shirt, magnet, business card stuff from the roofing sales organization, because he wants to create his own independent sales organization, branding himself as
The roof
think
dog.
of it like well, yeah. So like in your case with the roofing supply stuff, you deal with manufacturers reps, right?
Yep.
So you got a rep that comes in to the supply organization who then provides multiple options of supplies to the end user. So
Correct.
the 1099 independent sales guy, if he was smart, he would create a company that's an independent sales organization. So therefore his shirt, his hat, his magnetic sign, his yard sign, whatever, is all branded to him, so that they call him about the roof, and then who he sells for on the back end could be XYZ Roofing.
Yep.
So that's really the dichotomy you should have.
Few companies are down for that, and I don't understand why. Actually, I do. It's control. It goes back to that control, right? I know, like, I align myself with people that brand themselves, right?
Yep.
And so one of my really good friends, Connor Mack, he goes by Your Friendly Neighborhood Roofer. And anyone in the area, they know, like, let me get a pen. I'm about to find this guy. Your Friendly Neighborhood Roofer. And in any Facebook group, he's referred. There's another one, Mr. Welds. He lives actually like right next to me almost. And I didn't know this for quite some time until like I paid attention to brands, right? And so finally I see, Mr. Welds is leaving my condo complex every day. I'm like, oh, we live in the same spot. So now we're really great friends. Now, how does he brand himself? Mr. Welds. When people hire him, it's Mr. Welds. When people hire Connor, it's Your Friendly Neighborhood Roofer. So on his signs for roofing company, it says Your Friendly Neighborhood Roofer. On the other side, it says Core 4 Construction. Big shout out to Montgomery Rocky and Core 4 Roofing and Construction for making that happen for a brand in the market. They seen how important it was to have someone like that and to brand themselves, to align themselves with their brand, right? And that's just the sales aspect. But it also translates into the business aspect, which I believe they've done a very beautiful job of.
As another example, I met a lady here in the Atlanta area. She's known as Donna the Roofer. She doesn't
Okay.
have any crew. She doesn't have any crews. She doesn't manage, the schedules. She literally has, based on what part of the city you're in, she has multiple roofing company organizations that she'll sell a roof somewhere, her marketing and whatever. So somewhere in the Atlanta area, she'll sell a roof. And then when she sells that roof, she's got to deal with, a couple of roofers in, various quadrants of the city. Hey,
She's a
XYZ
broker.
guy, I just sold this roof. Can you do it? Or would you do it? Or whatever. And based on where in the city that she sells that deal, then they have a contractor come do the fulfillment side of that deal.
Yes.
But she is literally an independent sales organization branding herself as Donna the Roofer. So when you buy a roof from Donna the Roofer, whoever does the fulfillment is in some respects almost irrelevant.
Right.
The guy who does the fulfillment is making money. Donna the Roofer, as an independent sales organization, is making money.
Right.
So everybody's happy, and that is a legit way to do it. And
Yep.
so that's kind of how I try to encourage these independent sales guys being paid 1099. Create yourself as a sales organization, make an S corp, and we can argue LLC S corp later, but make
Right.
yourself an S corp. You've got a main roofing company that you sell for. You've got a gutter company, a siding company, a deck building company, maybe a landscape guy. So when you're pitching Mr. and Miss Smith on why they need to hire you to buy a roof, whether it's insurance, whether it's retail, whatever that looks like, who cares? But guess what? Maybe Jose's gutters or George's painting or whatever, they can help spruce up their family, their house. And guess what? You're the independent sales
Right.
organization getting a rip off of every one of those things.
Yep. I think that's
And
a
and
real
so you're
crucial way to
making
do things.
money. That's right. You're making money, and then I can show the independent or the roofing sales company how they can make more money, not just on the actual physical labor of doing the work.
Yep.
If you have a custom CRM or a great process and some other kind of unique things to your success, license that shit out to these independent sales organizations.
Yeah.
Charge them a monthly fee to use your process.
Yeah. I'm on point with that. I know one person that specifically does this. This is his business model. I actually just gave him a shout out in an episode that aired on Saturday. And so what is awesome, his name's Eli King. He goes by the Roof Broker. And he does just that. Whether it's it's his sales organization procures the lead. Doesn't matter how they do it. They procure the lead and they sell the lead, and then they broker that sale to the sales organization, be it a roofing company. Okay, and then they fulfill, like you're saying. So this method is out there, and he does the exact same thing, leases out the processes, etc. I don't know exactly how he does it. It's not exactly my business, but he does it amazingly and brands himself the right way. Eli King, big shout out again. Freaking awesome that this is popping up
And
again.
I think the reason that what I'm explaining and what you're explaining he's done isn't more prevalent goes back to that monkey see, monkey do mentality.
Yep.
They get hired in a new trade and they learn that trade, and either they want a bigger piece of the pie or they think they can do it better than boss man or whatever their reasons. They'll start their own thing. Again, glad for them. They bit the bullet. They wanted to be independent. And so good. Kudos all around.
Right.
But if nobody ever taught you business, all you know is what you can, what you're blind, the blinders are on, and all you know is what you can see directly in front of you. You've never learned anything to open that up and think wider and broader of other things. And here's something I've got a PA client that I'm helping them with some business process stuff, and there's some other ideas floating around. And I'm like, well, in the gold rush, it wasn't the actual gold miners that got rich. It was all the guys who made the picks and forks and axes and the shovels.
Yep.
they're the ones who got rich because the gold miners needed all that stuff.
Yep. Distributors.
So, in some respects, yeah. Or like your guy with the brokering thing. That's
Yep.
exactly what they're doing.
Yep.
They're on the outside feeding the inside.
How does worker classification affect eligibility for benefits such as healthcare, retirement plans, and workers' compensation?
Well, if you're 1099, you get no workers' comp unless you're an ISO and you go buy it, your own insurance policies and so on. You're totally independent. So
Independent Sales Organization, for those of you guys wondering what ISO is.
correct. Sorry, I
No,
sometimes
you're
use
good.
acronyms and lingo, not
I know.
thinking where I'm at.
I got you.
So if you're W-2, obviously there's federal laws that dictate based on how many employees you have, meaning W-2 employees you have. If it's over 20, I think it is, then you're obligated to provide health insurance plans, things of that nature. Obviously, depending on the size of the business, you may or may not provide some kind of 401k
Right.
or some kind of alternate retirement type scenarios. But if you're a 1099 independent, they don't owe you jack.
Right.
Meaning the roofing sales owners don't owe you nothing. Now, if you want that kind of stuff, again, create yourself an independent sales organization, and you can go obtain that on your own, and it's more cost efficient obtaining it on your own as a business than if you're trying to find, say insurance for you and your family on an open market.
Okay. In terms of cost considerations, I know we kind of touched on this earlier. What are the differences between hiring independent contractors versus employees?
As a direct cost, you mean?
Yes. So, in terms of cost considerations, what are the significant differences between hiring independent contractors versus an employee? So, a W-2.
Strictly from a hiring perspective, I don't know that it would be really any different because you still have to that recruitment process is relatively the same whether they're going to be paid W-2 or 1099.
So, I think more of what I'm getting at here is, and actually, for those of you wanting to know where the list of questions came from, ChatGPT, AI, always AI. All right. But you got to know how to like talk back and forth with the AI. So, anyhow, so I think really more of what I was looking at for this is what is the big cost differences. So you're looking at a 1099 in the simplest sense. A lot of people think free. Okay. And then W-2, this is simplest sense. 1099 free. W-2 got to pay for. Right. And so that's really what I'm looking at. Right.
Okay.
What do you think the cost differences are with a 1099 versus hiring, let's say that organization over 20, right? Hiring a W-2.
Well, again, your simplest form breakdown is kind of extremely accurate because if you
Yeah.
hire somebody as a 1099, they're free to you.
Yeah.
For all intents and purposes, versus the W-2 employee where you have substantial labor burden, and that labor burden is encompassing of whatever benefits that you give them. And again, if you got enough employees that you trigger those federal mandates, there are direct costs involved in providing insurance to them, even if
Right.
you're passing that 100% along to the employee. Obviously, you at some point are going to offer a 1 week, 2 week type paid vacation.
Right.
Paid holidays.
Yep.
That's all things that fall
PTO,
under
all
that
that.
W-2 cost.
Yep.
1099, you don't owe them vacation money. You don't owe them paid time off. You don't owe them for Thanksgiving and Christmas Day when it falls in the middle of the week.
Yep.
So again, when you break it down like you
Yep.
did, 1099 is essentially free. W-2 is not.
You got to pay for.
And again, the reason they do 1099 because they don't understand their numbers and the cost of W-2. they either realize they can't afford it, or they're just trying to play the game to where that they somehow increase their margins by ignoring the responsibilities of maintaining a W-2 organization.
Mm. All right, next one here. Are there any notable differences in the rights and protections afforded to independent contractors compared to employees?
Independent contractors get jack.
Exactly.
Because I'm guessing that's kind of more of a Department of Labor type question that
Yeah, it
you're
is.
asking, where so part of the company I mentioned earlier that paid upwards of 300 some $1,000 in fines, they had a couple people working for them, got pissed off at the way things were going, so they went and complained to the Department of Labor.
Yep.
And the Department of Labor's like, oh, so you're really treating these guys like W-2 but paying them 1099.
Yep.
And they got the hammer.
Yep.
So now they've revamped how they do everything, and they're doing things legit now. And they're doing something similar that we've already discussed about, hey, you have to buy your shirts from me, you buy your business cards from me, you buy everything from me, and here's leads, you set them and you do your thing. Versus W-2, if you're going to dictate the meetings, you're going to dictate this, dictate that, you've got all kinds of federal and state Department of Labor protections.
This is a good one. How might recent trends such as the rise of the gig economy or remote work impact the way businesses approach worker classification in the future?
I think if you're a wise business owner, you can utilize it and make money on it. And that goes back to the situation of kind of like independent sales organizations. But if you're using like remote workers, like virtual assistants and stuff, okay, well, guess what? You can hire a virtual assistant company. Or if you're one of the admins working at this business and you want to work remotely, create yourself a little virtual assistant company. They pay you as a company. And now not only are you being a virtual assistant for that roofing company, you can offer your virtual assistant services to other roofing companies or other trade contractors or other businesses. Obviously, you want to stay niched down so that you're more proficient and not having to try and wear an accounting firm's hat this day or
Right.
this hour, switching it to a plumbing company and then a roofing company hat later in the day.
Right.
So again, I think that being a virtual assistant in a gig type economy is a good thing, but create a company out of it, service multiple companies, which obviously is more revenue, but it also keeps that delineation between W-2 and 1099 compliant.
Right. Let's see. What are the benefits and disadvantages for businesses in hiring independent contractors versus employees?
Well, let's start with the simple one, which is W-2. If you're a W-2 employee, you work for somebody and they control you, for lack of a better way to put it. They tell you when you have to come to work. They give you a window when you have to take your breaks. They kind of dictate your 8 hour day, 9 hour day schedule. Versus 1099, just as long as you meet the
Complete it.
requirement, just as long as you meet the requirement of whatever that task is, and you complete it in the expected time frame, you can do what you want when you want. And again, if you've set yourself up as a sales organization, okay, for contractor A, roofing contractor A, you run a 10 a.m. Tuesday appointment, but maybe someone's interested in buying siding from you. So now that that contractor, you bought an appointment from them for say 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Well, so you as the independent sales guy got all the flexibility in the world to sell as many products or services as you want.
Yeah.
Again, versus the W-2, they own you basically 8 to 5 or whatever, 7 to 3 or whatever that agreed upon schedule looks like. They basically own your ass.
Correct. You got to do what what they say.
That's
and
right.
As long as it's done the right way, there's really nothing wrong with that, right?
Correct.
So Are there any recent regulatory changes or court rulings that you're aware of that businesses should be aware of regarding worker classification?
Again, I don't really get into that, and I maybe probably should have for preparation for this, but I didn't know what questions you were going to throw at me. But so
No
for
worries.
specific court cases, case law, or anything specific regulatory, I'm not aware of any rules that have been enacted. I have read some articles and some pieces that have alluded to a tightening of the enforcement of the rules.
Same.
Um,
Which
you know,
means this
yeah.
shit has been law for a very long time.
Oh, it has. It has.
It's just enforcement of said laws is starting to increase.
That's correct.
And I think everyone's seen that, they've hired 600,000 new agents, and like that's meant to scare a lot of the businesses into doing things the right way, or doing
Mm-hmm.
things the way in which that the law requires. But until they're met with an immovable force, they're not moving. And generally that is the case for most
And unfortunately, that
organizations.
movable force is likely going to bankrupt them or put them out of business. Most of them.
120%. I was speaking to, and I may have the opportunity to interview them in the future. I was speaking to a contractor that this happened to in the 90s. They misclassified people in the 90s, and that company fell. It was a roofing company. It was a really, really big roofing company in Houston. And because of the amount that they owed, like there
Mm-hmm.
was just no way that they could pay it all back. They were bankrupt. It was done. They were absolutely done. And that's why I feel it's so important to educate the masses, to speak about this. And it's not just important to me, it's important to major boards, it's important to major state legislatures, to lobbyists that are pushing the new legislature, because once new laws are established for, let's say, construction, there's going to be an investigation period of time in which that the local state government and the federal government will do some digging and just make sure everybody's on the up and up. And if
Mm-hmm.
you're not, you're going to be met with that immovable force that we were talking about just a second ago, right? So this podcast is solely meant for you to be educated, not to point fingers, to name names, to say you're doing it wrong. This goes back to education that we were talking about to begin with. A lot of organizations are just not educated on the business side of things. Trade, amazing, the best at what they're doing, but business, you need someone to come in and analyze and help you do things the right way.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I'm so glad we're able to bring this to everyone, because right now we got someone that can do that, right? Scott, I really appreciate you coming on today. I want to try and hit one or two more questions. What steps can a business take to ensure they are properly classifying workers and staying compliant with applicable laws and regulations?
I think that they just need to decide how they want to do it, and then stick with it. I don't object to a business wanting to be W-2 and control everything. That way they control 100% of the marketing, they control 100% of the production, they control
Yeah.
100%. In some respects, that might give them maybe a better product.
Maybe.
But yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
again, you got schmoes all over the place, and you're always going to have some bozo that doesn't care. But
Yep.
But then the other side is if you got two entities that are truly entrepreneurial, meaning the roofing company owner and the 1099 independent contractor, if you're both truly entrepreneurial, do it that way and say, hey, we're going to do all the back end fulfillment and production. You're going to do all the selling. And I can teach the roofing company how to probably make more money doing that, and the independent sales guy making more money doing that than if they're just as a W-2. Now, again, you have to have the right checks and balances and some other things, again, to try and make sure you're producing a good product and things of that nature, and on the same page from a marketing perspective, so that the independent is marketing this roofing company's products and services the way the market dominating position for that company is. For the siding company, the same thing. But then you've also got the independent sales organization, independent contractor, that they're branding themselves. They've got their own market dominating position, and those have to work together.
Yeah.
So if you both kind of have the same vision, split them apart. Let the roofing guy make a shit ton of money. Let the independent sales organization make a shit ton of money. But if you want to be a company that hires W-2 people because you want 100% of that control, then decide that's what you want to do. Learn the business side so that your margins are such that you can afford that labor burden and the taxes and everything else and still profit accordingly. But if you do that, you're going to have to learn how to sell. Just taking insurance proceeds is not going to cut it. There's no margin there.
That would be the difference between an order taker and a salesperson. Just saying.
Yeah.
Because one takes an order and one actually sells the job.
Correct. And I've gotten some pushback on this. I believe if you set your market dominating position right and you've done your marketing right, the sales guy is an order taker. You don't really have to sell nothing because your process has already teed that prospect up. So you show up, you're taking an order. They know they want to do business to you,
so do you
and
want
they'd be a fool to do business
or,
to anybody else.
Sell? So that's the big question. So do you want to take an order or sell?
Correct.
And so, yeah, and you can look at that at like in two sides of the coin. I think there's probably about 30 different sides of that coin, really.
Probably.
Because it just varies per person. Like it really does. But I'm going to put it in perspective of me. Okay. Just so everybody can understand, put yourself in this position while I'm saying it. That way you can start figuring out where you are and where you should be. I would rather take orders than sell. That's myself. And here's why. I work for a roofing supply store, right? So would I rather sell myself or sell these materials, go to the contractor at their job sites and tell them, hey, I can sell you these materials? Or would I rather put myself in the right marketing position and instead everything aligns right to where they say, hey, can I buy my materials from you? Completely different.
Yes, sir.
Completely different way. And it breeds a different kind of sale, if you would. So it's not a shot against you if you take orders or if you sell, right? Because if you set up yourself in the right way, you can just make a bunch of orders, and that's a sale.
It is. And one thing that, we can pull some sales guru stuff on folks and say only 1% of the buying public is a buy now buyer.
Right.
And the buy now buyer is the guy that goes out in the morning, he's ready to crank the car to go to work and his battery's dead. Well, guess what? He needs to buy a new battery now.
Yeah.
But when it comes to a kitchen remodel or a new roof or landscape design or a new deck or sunroom on the back of the house, they don't just wake up in the morning and say, call the first person that their finger lands on in a Google search and says, hey, come install my sunroom. So there's a buyer's journey there. 99% of the people need to be brought through a buyer's journey. They need 5 to 12 contacts before they pull the trigger.
Yep.
So do you want to be the guy knocking a door and then high pressure selling somebody into buying a roof at whatever your number is? Or do you want to create a situation where you've nurtured them along this buyer's journey, and they're all of a sudden like, you know what? I would be a complete fool not to buy from Tom, Dick, Harry, or whoever,
Right.
versus all these other guys that show up and try and strong arm me into buying something.
A part
So
of that
again,
could
that gets
be
into some of the
adding
marketing side of things.
exactly the marketing. So a part of that could be adding an instant estimator tool to your website, adding a
Correct.
link to it to all your social medias, so that if anybody gets up on that, and like I've seen a couple, let's say 2 different instant estimators, and they're both out of this world. It is insane, and it it breeds people to go through that process, and it's a constant, like multiple times they get that connection, like you said,
Mm-hmm.
to where they they as the sales rep show up and sell the job, right?
Well, and if
In a
they've
sense,
done that right, kind of your marketing format, we call it the conversion equation. You want to interrupt somebody's thinking. You then want to engage them, educate them, and then create an offer. And that's just on the marketing side. So somewhere, shape, or form, you have to interrupt their thinking. You need to engage them and educate them. And if your landing page and your instant estimate, and then your instant estimator is then the offer.
yeah.
So now your instant estimator gives them an estimate, a kind of a round based on some simple facts. Here's the number you're looking at. Now they're in your system. You then drip on them, email, text, direct mail, whatever. And at some point, you've educated them enough that they're going to be like, I need to call this guy. He's given me all this stuff. He hasn't been a blowhard. He hasn't blown a bunch of smoke up my tail, whatever. That's when you're an order taker. You're literally, your system pre-sold them. You're showing up just to pick colors and take an order. But
And
again,
speaking
that
of
goes
that,
back to a lot of market dominating position, compelling offer, and a lot of foundational stuff that these guys have no clue of.
so speaking of that, how they get a hold of you, how do people get a hold of you, Scott?
The easiest way they can find me, Divergent Business Solutions on Facebook, and message me. My email is scott@divergent, DIVERGENTBIZ solutions.com. And they can always call me on the phone, 470-457-5290. They could even go, I got a book published. I got 2 more in the wings. I think I sent you one copy of one that I'm about to have published here, that they can get all kinds of free resources from my website, which is divergentbizsolutions.net. And I can get you all that so you can put it up in a whatever.
Absolutely. So you guys heard it first here at Roofing on the Rise. It has been an amazing live stream today. We have had Scott Self with Business Divergent Solutions. We are sponsored by Roofing Supply Incorporated in the Houston marketplace, where you can get your shingles from me. Telephone number 210-919-8987. Again, 210-919-8987. Also sponsored by West Group Public Adjusters. You can get a hand-tailored claims experience. West Group is the one for you. We're also sponsored by RepCard, digital business card that is definitely different than any other card that's on the market. If you're looking for an amazing digital business card, hit me up. I'd love to get you connected. Again, it has been an absolutely live stream. Scott, thank you so much for coming on. We're going to have to do another live stream. We're going to do another live stream on the types of classification of business. What you do and how you do it is extremely important.